we're gonna do all the practice problems, which is 1 through 12, and then we'll do the evens on sharpening skills. And that evens on sharpening skills, hopefully that's going to help you kind of keep up with some of the stuff we did earlier. Let's just start with number 1. 0.5x equal 10. All right, you may go, oh no, it's a decimal, but remember decimals are numbers too. We don't want to make them feel lonely, so we don't like them. If you circle your variable and you say, okay, I'm just trying to get your variable by itself, what's the variable being multiplied by? 0.5. So what's the opposite of multiplying something by 0.5? Yeah, dividing it by 0.5. So all that stuff that you've done, when you were younger, it still applies. I like to take things in decimals and turn them to fractions, but that might not be the easiest thing to do here. So let's just work all these as decimals. If you've forgotten how to divide things, you remember it's the top divided by what's on the bottom. Do you remember that when you divide with the decimal, you just move the decimal place over 1 here to make it a whole number? So I'll move it. Remember, there's an invisible one after the 10. I'll move it over 1. Really, this problem is 5 divided by 100. I think in previous years, Miss Bailey told y'all just to write it and do it on the same problem, but I like to rewrite it. You can do it however you want to. It's easier for me to see that 5 goes into 120 times than it is to look at that mess on top and try to do it. My brain just doesn't want to, think about that too much. But if you rewrite it, do you see how much easier it looks to do it? So do however you want to. I really don't care. 5 goes into 10 twice. That's 10. Bring down your 0. 5 goes into 0 times, so x is 20. People do these. Okay, let's say you don't like decimals. You mean you really don't like decimals. Maybe you're prejudiced against decimals. Here's another way you could take care of it. I could work this just the way we did in problem number 1, but here's another way I can do it. If I moved all the decimal places in the number over 1 space, wouldn't that just be 14a equal 28? You could do that, and really, isn't that the same thing? When you move the decimal place over 1 space, isn't that the same thing as multiplying by 10? Isn't that what you're really doing when you bump a decimal place over 1 space? So if you don't want to divide with that mess, just go ahead and say, well, I'm going to bump everything over now, but you have to do it to every single number that you see. So 10 times 1.4a would become 14a, or just bump it over once if you don't want to think about multiplying by 10. 10 times 2.8 would also bump it over 1 place. You'd have 14a is 28. So if you want to get rid of them up front, you could, if that just makes you feel better. Because honestly, you can do, as long as you're doing a legal math operation, you could do it however you want to. You could still do it with the decimals, but if you don't like decimals, this is a nice trick. If I want to get a by itself, now what do I need to do? Yeah, just divide by 14. It looks a little bit better than dividing 2.8 by 1.4, and we can see the answer is going to be 2. And didn't we skip all that icky, like rewriting the division and moving it over there? That might be an easier way to do it, is just to do it right there. Now, be careful about that. Let's move to one that has more terms in it. Let's move to number 7, for instance. Doing that to make sure you're thinking correctly. Here's what I would do here. You got a choice. How many decimal places do you really want to get rid of here? 2 at the most. Right? You're looking at the term that has the most of them. It doesn't .02 have 2 spots here. Everything else just has 1 spot after the decimal place, doesn't it? So if I'm going to get rid of it, there's a couple of things I could do here. One would be to go ahead and add the x's first. I'm not going to do that because I'm not sure many of you would think to do that. How many of you, if you want to get rid of the decimals first, to just get the whole numbers? Most people would like to do that, maybe? Couldn't you just say, instead of multiplying by 10, couldn't you multiply everything by 100? Wouldn't that move all the decimal places over 2 spaces? So it's kind of like what I'm going to do is I'm thinking I want to move all my decimal places over 2 spaces to get rid of every single one of them. So I'm going to multiply every single term by 100. Let me go ahead and even just write the 100 here because we haven't talked about distributing yet, so I want to make sure you're understanding what I mean here. So for 0.2, if I move it over 2 places, what would 0.2 become? Be 20, right? 20x, good. And on 0.02x, if I bump it over 2 places, it would become 2x, And then on 4.4, if I bump it over 2 spaces, which is the same thing as multiplying by 100, it is 440. See, I accidentally wrote the decimal down. Okay, so now we could, what will we do next?
Add the 20 into it.
Right, before we would start actually solving, we want to clean up every side. We just did there's a lot of things you can do to change a problem to make it easier to work. And we're still kind of working on that part. We haven't really started solving yet. And so we realized, oh, we could simplify this 20 plus 2x becomes 22x, doesn't it? Now can I start solving? Yeah, there's no more cleanup to do. I just got one term on each side, so it's not like I could put anything else together. So if you circle your x, if I want to get x by itself, what am I going to do? What's going on with the x? Why? Yeah, he's got that 22 multiplied by him. So the opposite of multiplying by 22 is dividing by 22. That circling that x, again, the reason it's kind of helpful is that there's people that start kind of doing something with the 440 because they think they need to do something there. Remember, if you keep focused on the variable, you're just trying to get everything away from it, and then you're just doing things to both sides to keep the equation equal. So 22 over 22 would be 1 over 1x, which is 1x, which is just x, right? And 44 divided by 22 would be 20, I'm okay if you have your calculator. When y'all take your test on next Monday, if you want to bring a calculator, you can. Remember, I only have at the most 3 that work, and those pink ones sometimes don't work.
Are we allowed to use our calculator on this?
You can if you want to. I would try, though, to work on cleaning these decimals up because you're going to get some icky word problems when you get into Algebra 1 and maybe even we might try some before the end of the year. And it's kind of nice to know that you can do these kind of things because it makes a hard problem look really easy if you've practiced getting the decimals moved over. So I would kind of practice this now while it looks a little simpler so that you're not learning a couple of things at once when you get to some of those ugly word problems in Algebra 1. It's 0.3x plus 0.2x equal 2.5 plus 3.5. If I want to get rid of my decimals, do I have to move them over first? Do I have to move all the decimals over first, do you think? No. I could if I want to, but in a way I'm moving a whole bunch of stuff. I'd have to move stuff over on 4 terms. Here, I'm going to just kind of make you, think about this question. Wouldn't it be easier to go ahead and say, what's 0.3 plus 0.2? Yeah, it's just 0.5x. Wouldn't you rather maybe move it over on 1 term than 2 on that side? I mean, I would just because the more stuff I got to move over, the more confused I get sometimes. And 2.5 plus 3.5, that's not hard either. Isn't that just 6? So I could clean up first if I want to. I don't have to. You could have moved them over on all 4 terms. But now if I clean up first, I've got less terms to have to move my decimal place over with. Do I even have to move my decimal place over? Again, no, not if I don't want to. I can divide both sides by 0.5, but if I don't like that, I could say, hey, I've got a decimal and I don't like it. To get rid of it, I'm going to multiply by 10, which moves it over one place. But if I moved it over one place on that number, got to do it over here, and that'll move it here. I'll fill in with a 0. I end up with 5x equals 60. And then to get x by itself, what would you do?
Divide by 5.
Yeah, just divide both sides by 5. 5 over 5 is 1x, which is just x. And then 60 divided by 5 is 12. Let me just, again.
It's 5 divided by, 60 divided by 5.
Well,
I said that wrong.
Okay, yeah, and that's what we did too, right? Yeah, we did 60 divided by 5. Well, no, I was just showing, remember it was 5x equals 60, then I said divide by 5. That's when I wrote that in. I didn't actually make a proportion. I was just showing the division as I went. So we probably did the same thing. Again, you could have done 0.5x equals 6. You could have divided both sides by 0.5, and you would have still gotten 12. If you had your calculator, decimals aren't really a problem. It's just kind of nice to know how to get rid of them, again, because you will want to in the future when you get longer word problems and stuff.